Let's do a FanDuel read. We'll dive right into that first topic of the day. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/UCSS to join today. That is FanDuel.com/UCSS for your one shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. G, you mentioned it. We talked about it quickly already, but what were your big takeaways from this Super Bowl destruction of the Kansas City Chiefs? Kudos to the Eagles. And secondly, does it change the way you think the Browns will approach building their team of the future that at one point they hope can contend for the Lombardi Trophy? G, start us off.
Well, first and foremost, I'm not going to give the Chiefs no type of excuses. I don't care if they was out till midnight. They could have been well rested, got 3 or 4 sensu beans, and did yoga.
They weren't winning.
They were not winning that game.
Yep.
Philadelphia. I read something on on Instagram, and it had the Rocky 5 or the Rock. What's Rocky when he fought Ivan Drago?
4.
Rocky. They had the Rocky 4 soundtrack. There's no easy way out. And he said every Philadelphia Eagles fan is driving to work with the Rocky 4 soundtrack on every single day, locked in, tapped in, ready to go. They were going to get smoked either way. The Eagles was the better team. They was hungry, better game plan. Andy Reid looked normal. Patrick Mahomes was spooked. He was out of it. Like Travis Kelce was a non-factor, and Taylor Swift got booed. It was the worst night of all time for the Chiefs. It was where I said, y'all might as well chalk this up. This looking bad for y'all. The defensive line, and this is the thing. The Eagles, when they are balling, you go back to the Super Bowl before. When the Eagles are balling, they got 4 or 5 dudes that's just getting after the quarterback. They get pass rush from defensive tackles. The DBs was everywhere. I mean, even the throws, the interception by the linebacker was wild. I'm like, do these guys know where they're running the ball? Like the Chiefs couldn't run the ball. I think they ran the ball 7 times between Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. They had nothing moving. And I'll tell you this, Jalen Hurts, he was the better quarterback. He made enough throws. I thought Saquon Barkley played well. He didn't have he averaged something like 2.8 yards per carry. But when you talk about Jalen Hurts, he ran the ball with his legs. Every single time that he needed a big play, he was like, all right, if it ain't there, I'm moving. If it ain't there, I'm scrambling. He moved the sticks, and he didn't, he had 1 turnover. But other than that, he was lights out, man. Like, he just played better. And it just goes to show you that if you're going to have to beat Patrick Mahomes, other teams in that Super Bowl game, they would have given Patrick 2 or 3 areas of opportunities to creep right back on in. Or give up a little play here. Defense was like, no,
foot on his throat.
All gas, no break.
That pick six, I said they about to blow these dudes out. And they listen. The Eagles was lights out. You got to have a quarterback, man. That's the way you got to play if you're gonna play against some of these other dudes. You got to use your legs. You got to be efficient. You got to have back breaking 3rd down plays. Eagles smoked them, and they're looking good, man. They're looking good.
I've never seen Patrick Mahomes look that bad.
Never. Either. I think it's the worst game he's ever played.
Yeah. I don't know I never looked up the numbers and all that, but just the eye test?
Just the eye test.
It was awful.
The numbers would be skewed because of the 50-yarder late to work.
Yeah.
His numbers weren't horrible. Just first of all, it was the pass rush. He just couldn't do anything.
Well, to Jason's favorite stat, and take this tag word full if you could, but according to Robert Mays, he averaged a minus 1.36 EPA per
That's
drop back
Deshaun
in the first half.
Yeah, now what was it for the game? Do we know?
I can look that up in a second.
Because he was way more efficient. In the first half, he did nothing.
But that will take into account garbage time, that stat.
No, that was just first half.
No, but I'm just saying, like throughout the game,
Sure.
It'll take into account garbage stats.
Yeah.
You don't get points for them. But that's
well, you know what?
Really
a lot of people.
Would you say that was his 10th worst ever in
take it back
Super Bowl history?
No.
No, in a game since 2018.
Since 2018.
For him?
For anyone.
No, for any
for anyone.
quarterback
Wow.
since 2018.
Well,
that was
what's
the
crazy about
10th
that is
worst
1 through
mark.
9 are Deshaun Watson.
Well,
He's got a
The
couple in
the
there.
last
I
note.
know he does.
He's got a
PJ
couple in
Walker
there.
is on that list. 2 Davis Mills games, the Sam Darnold ghost games, Will Greer. So a category, probably the
You
only
do
category
not
in
wanna
history of
be
the
in.
world
No.
that Patrick Mahomes is in with those guys.
Now, the one thing, the garbage time, that touchdown pass, I know it was garbage time. Technically, it is the very definition of garbage time.
Great throw.
It was an like, he literally put that in the 6
Yep.
inches of space that it had to hit.
Because I thought, where's that been all
I know. It was unbelievable.
didn't he look kind of? To me, the thing that stood out, it looked like Patrick Mahomes was a little slow. Like Patrick usually has them things, those plays where he gets out of pressure and he just has enough giddy up to get out of like a sack or
Or
he
is
has-
the Eagles' defensive front just that quick?
I think that I just credit Philly's defense.
Wow.
I do too. What was amazing to me, one of the most incredible stats of this Super Bowl, they never sent more than 4 rushers. They didn't blitz.
Yeah.
And I was reading some comments after the game. They didn't need to blitz. There were a couple times that Vic thought, maybe I should dial it up here,
Yeah.
but why risk it? I don't need to.
Our Mike Sando had something really interesting today, and I don't remember the numbers. You can go find them if you're interested. Basically, the way to beat Mahomes is make him hold the ball. When he gets rid of it quick,
Yeah.
is when they're going to cut you up. But again, you need the coverage to hold
Sure.
in order to get him to hold the
And
ball.
their coverage was phenomenal.
And the way to get the coverage to hold is to get there with 4 and be able to drop.
They
You want to see a
talked-
crazy stat, Jay?
Yeah,
about
sure.
that? And let's take this tag before. This is from Seth Walder. According to ESPN research, the Eagles blitzed Patrick Mahomes on 0 of his 42 dropbacks.
Wow.
It's the 6th time in Super Bowl history a quarterback has not been blitzed a single time. All 6 lost.
Phenomenal.
If you can get a pass
What
rush
a
with
stat.
4 pass rushers and play coverage on the back end,
Right.
you have a chance
Okay,
against
so
the best.
that's perfect because the question for today, to start, really wasn't the Super Bowl discussion, although how do you not discuss it? The question for today was, did this season, this Super Bowl, the way it played out, change the way you think you can build a Super Bowl contender? I so wish Bull was here because we've been having this argument for 3 years. I have been telling Bull for 3 years that the league is shifting away. And please don't mistake this. I am not saying quarterbacks aren't important. I will still and forever drive home this nail. They are still the most important position on the field. What I'm saying, what I'm about to say here is this. 5 years ago, absolutely imperative. The best quarterback did not win the game yesterday. The quarterback that played the best did.
Yes.
But the best quarterback did not win. What won? The team that had the best running game, and yesterday they didn't need it, and the team that had the best defense. And I've always said things run in cycles in the NFL. It does in all sports too. We've seen it in the NBA where big men was the only way you could win, and then it moved away from that.
But Barkley didn't win him that game. Jalen Hurts did.
100%. But here's what I'm about to say. The way they're constructed was they didn't have to lean on anything. Kansas City had to lean on Patrick Mahomes. Kansas City said, cool, we'll take that away. Philly is so complete. The best team won. This is the best team. So, yes, you better have a quarterback, and you better have a top 10 to 12 quarterback. I don't know how many people had Jalen Hurts in the top 5 coming into yesterday.
Nobody. In top 5?
Nobody
Nobody.
did. If he's in the top 10, he's at the bottom of it. He's more likely in the upper half. However, and it was clear, Kansas City's game plan from jump, and I don't blame them, we're going to stop the run game, period. And they did. But Philly was so good, they just shifted to a different gear, and they were able to beat them that way. What Philly did to Kansas City that they couldn't get out of was they said very plain and simply, he's going to have to beat us. He's going to have to beat us, and he's going to have to do it without us sending blitzers. So I think the better defense won. I think the better running game won. Because even though Philly didn't run the ball like they normally do, they ran it better than Kansas City.
and to make them respect.
So ultimately, my conclusion to this is what I've been driving at for 3 years. The 2 high safeties have mandated that quarterbacks now dink, 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 dink. Philly is the perfect recipe of a team that can take that away from you. They don't have to send extra blitzers. Their cover guys were great. I read something this morning where Vic Fangio was talking about how we studied their routes on plays in which Mahomes broke the pocket. And we found a trend that either no one else has found it or no one else has exploited it to this point. If you go back and look at the Tampa game, when Tampa nearly beat Kansas City, I think they were onto it in that game as well. But what they figured out was he's throwing to space in those situations. And think of in your mind when he sprints to the right and what he ends up throwing to. At first, it comes out of his hand, you're like, there's no one there. And then all of a sudden, Travis Kelce comes diving in. He's not throwing to men, he's throwing to spots. Philly recognized that, and Vic Fangio said, we studied it all week. And what we decided to do was we were going to vacate those spaces where he likes to throw to, and one of them led to a pick six, the other one led to an interception. So I do think that we have officially made the switch from you can just take an all-star crazy quarterback. I mean, look at the best three of the top four quarterbacks were in the Super Bowl, and I know they're all in the AFC, but Burrow didn't make the playoffs. Allen wasn't enough. Jackson wasn't enough. I think I'm not saying we're in a defensive era. What I'm saying is the blueprint to building an NFL championship team no longer mandates that you have a top five quarterback. You can do it in other ways.
But if you want to do it like that, you better be
You're right.
on a monthly subscription of the premium version of Project Stockpile.
You're right.
You better
and that's
have
what
that
Philly's been
subscription.
on. Remember when Philly drafted Carter? Everybody threw their hands in the air and said, oh my God, how do you beat this team?
Think about this, and I just pulled it up. Now, these are the guys that are starting on their defense. Look how many guys that they've picked up in the last 3 drafts from 2022, 2023, and 2024. Nolan Smith Jr., right? Edge rusher. He's a recent pick. Jordan Davis is a recent pick. Jalen Carter is a recent pick. Nakobe Dean is a recent pick. Quinyon Mitchell, kid out of Toledo, I believe. He is starting corner. Cooper DeJean, he's a rookie?
He's a rookie. He's 22 years old yesterday.
All of those guys I named have been drafted within the last 2 to 3 drafts.
And where do they play? What side of the ball?
And they're on defense.
Yep. And so I'm not saying that, but they said it at the end of the game, and I thought it was fitting. They said, well, I guess defense does win championships again. It is cyclical. It all goes around. And what happens is the NFL's a copycat league. The trend is to do what teams have done on defense with the 2 high safeties and make you beat them a lot of times. 13-play drive, not a 3-play drive. Those days seem to be gone. But what's interesting to me is because it's a copycat league, I think you'll see more and more teams now follow the leader, put more draft assets into the defense, and then guess what will happen? Offenses will come back to rule the day. It just goes in a circle. I
do believe that the difference between this year's Philadelphia Eagles team and the team that lost to the Chiefs a couple of years ago is this. They saw what Jalen Hurts was, Jason, and they said, listen, we can go get Saquon Barkley, and he can make enough plays where Jalen Hurts ain't got to do it all the time. Yep. If you're Jalen Hurts, you got Devontae Smith, you got Saquon Barkley, you got another monster on the outside. And what's his name? I forget his name. He
Jordan Davis.
No, the receiver.
AJ Brown.
AJ Brown. And you got a good tight end. Think about where he has the biggest offensive line in the game.
Ever.
Ever.
The game ever.
Yeah, I love that graphic where they showed this average size of the Eagles linemen.
In Super Bowl I.
And Super Bowl I. Nearly 100 pounds heavier. And that's just the evolution of the game. But, gee, you're right. This offensive line isn't just big. They're gargantuan. They're big by today's standards. And I said when it was 10-0 to the folks that I was watching the game with, it's over because Kansas City can't do anything with either line. Philly completely dominated the line of scrimmage on offense, and they completely dominated the line of scrimmage on defense. That is still the point of attack. That is still where you have to win. And I knew from that point, this thing is over. There's no way Kansas City's mounting a comeback.
Kansas City couldn't get nobody to win on the outside either. Nobody won.
No.
DeAndre Hopkins, Travis Kelce. Let me talk to you, big bro. Let me talk to you, big dog. I like you. You from the land. You might put on 30 pounds to go ahead and be pass blocking. It was nasty work for you. You look slow. You looked ineffective.
Yeah, but 3 weeks ago he looked like old Travis Kelce.
Hey, listen, life comes at you fast.
Not that fast.
Really,
he got fat in 3 weeks.
Hey, listen, there's been a little bit of decline in Kelce over the last.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Like
There's some talk that yesterday was going to be his last game, and I think if they won, he would have retired.
I think so
I
too.
agree.
And he would have proposed.
You see
Philly just wrecked his entire
Hey, man,
day.
that was a bad day for everybody involved, bro. I'm like, man, he had to, and then he went to the Dawson's Creek haircut. I'm like,
Yeah.
when did you get to Dawson's Creek?
He looked like he walked out of a 1970s GQ
I'm like,
magazine.
dog, man, you look like you. Listen, that's a party of 5. What are you doing, bro? You know, old white sitcoms for 200. Alex?
Jason, so what do you think about what we saw yesterday and how that translates to what the Browns have to do to put themselves in a position to potentially win a Super Bowl?
I mean,
Does it change how you felt
No.
about the team building process?
No, until you find a quarterback, nothing else matters. Like, that hasn't changed. And I think Jay and I disagree on some of what he said, but ultimately, you still got to have a quarterback, and you got to have a top.
I'm not saying again.
That's why-
I
yeah,
reemphasize.
that's why we agree
it
on that.
still is and will always be the most important position
Absolutely.
in sports. What I'm saying is, gone are the days where you can just throw a great quarterback out there and win it. They won it last year with a great quarterback.
Yeah, they did.
And I think those days are gone.
But I also think when you start making broad assumptions based on one game, like this isn't the NBA Finals where if they played game 2 tomorrow night, Kansas City could beat them by 30.
But they played
that's
10 times.
That's the beauty
Philly
of the
would beat 'em
NFL.
7.
That's the beauty of the NFL is you get one shot at it.
That is.
And then you draw all the conclusions you want based off of that one game.
Yeah, but also I think I'm drawing it on the last 3 years. I'm drawing it on how offense was almost like a pinball game for a while, and then defenses really came back, and then offenses kind of figured out, okay, you're going to go with 2 safeties. We're just going to – and look at Patrick Mahomes' pass chart. Everything is within 10 yards because that's what the defense was giving.
I wrote about that early in the year.
But the Eagles took that away.
Yeah, I wrote about that early in the year. You're right to the point that the 2 high safety look has changed the way quarterbacks are attacking this.
Yes.
That is true. But to me, like I think Jalen Hurts is better than he gets credit for. Like I still think he's a top 10 quarterback.
You do?
Yeah. I mean, probably at the lower end of the 10.
Okay.
I don't know if I could sit here and rank them all, but
That's where I think he is,
I
too.
don't know that I can come up with 10 quarterbacks that I'd rather have than Jalen Hurts. I mean, he was phenomenal yesterday.
I mean, 17 to 22, he had the 1 interception.
He didn't throw a pass after, I think, the second quarter.
He was phenomenal.
Those were, I think, his first half stats almost.
And that 70,
He barely threw the ball.
That
in the
He threw
second
the, he
half.
threw the dot
the
touchdown
deep
to
ball.
Devonta Smith.
I think that was it.
Yeah.
He averaged 10 yards per throw, so he wasn't just dinking and dunking.
Well, the
And
Smith thing it skews everything too.
he still
But
averaged 10
he had
yards
he had the
attempt.
great throw taken back on the PI.
He played
Brown.
great. Listen,
Yeah, he was-
he should have been the MVP, and he gave you what he gives you with his legs.
And I like their game plan a lot better. Like there was never a time where it felt like Kansas City was able to kind of gauge and stop what they were doing. They stayed balanced. Like they had to make sure Saquon wasn't gonna kill him. So they really did a nice job on the run with him. But what happened is, after they started locking him down, they still got him the ball out of the backfield. And then when it was 3rd and 6 and 3rd and 7. They just had nothing for contain in terms of Jalen Hurts. When you start having linebackers turn around and looking like this, and they start doing this.
I think Andy Reid was trying to find his kryptonite. He was looking around like,
where'd
my fastball go?
Spags was just he was
Scratching his head.
He was in that place sheet like this, Jay. Like I've never seen him
I
so
know.
flustered.
You know what? I always used to use this as a test. If you switch quarterbacks, which team wins? If you put Jalen Hurts on Kansas City, Philly still wins.
If you put Jalen Hurts on Kansas
Kansas
City.
City.
Well, yesterday, probably yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I would take Mahomes. If they line up and play it again tomorrow, I'm still taking Patrick
probably take
Mahomes in
Mahomes.
that game.
I don't think I would. I don't
But
think
I would.
I mean, I think the way the game fell when they were up 10-0 and they got that pick 6, that was done. Because it looked like one of them games where Kansas City needed to make it a real nasty game where we hang around. Oh, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. Here goes a touchdown that you didn't think he was going to get, and then you're right back in the game. I thought it was going to be one of them nip-tuck type games, but then they get to pick 6, and it's 17-0.
game.
That's
How about the
losses.
pass interference on the first drive?
Oh, people was going crazy.
my
People was going crazy.
Jay,
There
I got a
was-
question for you real quick.
Yeah.
Back in week 3 of this NFL season.
Yep.
So going back to week 3,
Okay.
We had a debate on this show. You were on, G was on, and I don't remember who the third person was. Bull was not on that day.
Okay.
But we were talking about, it was coming off the Jaguars win. Deshaun Watson versus other quarterbacks.
Okay.
And we said Tua, Jalen Hurts, and Deshaun.
Yeah.
And at that time, and I'm looking at the clip right now, you said you would take Deshaun over Jalen Hurts.
And at that time, I would have.
Would you like to retract that
Well,
statement?
no. Here, see, like G always says, if you don't change your mind when you get more information, you're an idiot.
Yeah, like.
Okay, so you are changing your mind now.
1,000%.
Just want to make sure.
Now,
You said
however,
no a second ago, so I wanna
however,
make
if
sure.
we rewind to that point in time, I was not nearly convinced yet that Deshaun Watson was going to become the worst quarterback ever.
Yeah,
like we didn't know that yet. We had
I was pretty sure by that point.
Listen, I was sure before they made the trade he wasn't the guy.
Yeah.
But what I kept, and the reason I kept holding out was because I had somebody who coached defense in the league for a very long time telling me it's still in there, Jay. It's still in there. And it's up to the Browns to pull it out. And I just kept thinking, how does a guy go from this $230 million guaranteed guy to the worst quarterback we've ever seen? And I think the thing that we've talked about it on this show a lot, and subsequently in talking with this guy, I think the cumulative answer to that is this muscle got blown to bits.
Yeah.
And when this went, his career was over.
I think that I've been doing this thesis statement and trying to understand it. I think if you had to boil it down after we've done all the research, I think that you would come to this conclusion. There's never been a top flight quarterback. I think there's two examples. There's two top flight quarterbacks who kind of just missed 2 years and came back and played. One is Michael Vick.
Yeah.
One is Deshaun Watson. Now the problem is Michael Vick's arm. He could throw a football through this wall today.
I know.
His arm is crazy. Second of all,
And it was still crazy when he came back.
And Michael Vick is a freak of nature. He is the equivalent of, we talk about Myles Garrett. The speed that Michael Vick had when he was 30, 31 was still ridiculous.
And Michael went to prison.
He didn't do nothing. It wasn't like he was doing workouts in there. He was in prison chilling for 2 years, and he came back out and was that guy. Now, here's the thing. Deshaun Watson didn't do anything for 2 years. As a quarterback who is not as athletic as Michael Vick and does not have nearly the arm as Michael Vick and has multiple injuries on different appendages on his body.
Yeah.
I mean, when you take 2 years off and you were never, from what we hear, a guy that was I'm going to sit back and process information and dissect people from the pocket. That was never your game. When you lose 2 or 3 steps and you sit out for 2 years, yeah, we should have seen that, right?
We should have. But we didn't.
I think the shoulder had a lot to do with it as well. Because it's an injury that quarterbacks don't. We have no history, no track record. It was such an odd injury to come back from. And if you go back and look at him, he was never great here. He was never great.
No. He had one great half.
But he was better than what we saw this year.
Yes.
And this year, I think it was the shoulder, a lot of it.
Even when he came back and he was suspended to 11 games and he came back to 6 games, there were times where you were like, okay, well, he has a practice. Oh, look, that's a nice throw. He didn't even look as good as he did in those previous years, which was like, wow.
In the past year, prior to this year, going into this year, the way it was explained to me, the way they looked at him was like, the good is really good. The good is as good. Like, he had moments.
And that's intoxicating.
The good is still really good, but the bad is, oh my God, where did that come from? Like, the bad was worse than they'd ever seen.
And there wasn't much good, and there was a whole lot of bad.
And this year, it just fell off
that
track completely.
When those first 2 games, when he was playing against the Cowboys, and everybody was like, hey, man, he's throwing the ball in the stands. Like, he was throwing the rock in the stands. Like, it wasn't throwaway. We were up here trying to dissect whether those were throwaways.
Yeah. Oh, no, they were not throwaways.
We were like, bro, there was an
7
intended
yards out of
receiver
bounds.
in here. Yeah. Like, he thought that's where he was.
I think he's a case study of what happens when an athlete loses his mind.
And that Cowboys
and I don't
game,
mean that in a mental, actual sense.
Yeah.
But when that, it shows you how important that muscle is to a quarterback.
I talked to players halfway through the year that once you get out of the moment, now they start talking a little bit more freely, going into that Dallas game like, oh, that went exactly how we thought it would. Like, we knew we weren't ready for that game.
Yeah. But you can't admit that to yourself or even to your teammate.
You can't admit that at the time.
That was wild.
You think maybe just like we fool ourselves every year at training camp. This is a 13-win team.
Yeah.
Oh, they ain't get me this year. I don't care who they get. They gonna get Michael Jackson.
I don't know. Last year you had Deshaun for 5,000.
They could get Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, Michael B. Jordan. I'm not picking them to win 13 or nothing.
So what's the lesson to take that the Browns can take? They're a long ways away. That's the lesson.
Yeah,
to
you know
take.
what? I think so too, because if it was just the add a quarterback and voila.
I am so sick of hearing the Browns are just a quarterback away.
It's not true.
It's not true. It is propaganda.
It is.
I know, but Jay, when you say this is a one-year rebuild, that's why I'm like,
But here's the thing.
Jason, no, it's not.
No, but here's the thing. It's actually 2 because you got the second pick and you've got the 31st pick the first pick of the second round. So you've already been through a lot of the pain. My point is, you've got this draft and you go through one more year. Like, you thought you were going to win this year. And you didn't.
You would.
But you go into next year knowing this is a transition year. That's what I'm saying. So it's really 2 because you've already been through the pain of one.
Okay, I'll listen to that.
You have this draft.
Well, that's
already.
what I said. I think on Friday I told you, I go, it can't be a one-year rebuild. This year was a rebuild.
And plus,
This year was the car accident. Next year, it was.
rehab,
Next
right?
year
So
is
now
the
we're in
cast.
rehab.
Next year's the cast.
Physical
The
therapy.
rehab.
Then you got to take the cast off and rebuild the muscles. They've atrophied.
Yeah, so you've got this draft. Obviously,
Oh.
you've got to hit on this draft, and you know next year isn't going to be great, or realistically. So then you have the draft following that, and then you should be able to walk again.
Okay, but to me,
even
I count that as 3 years.
But even so, if you get the picks that you want to get from Myles Garrett, that can accelerate things a bit too.
For sure.
I'm glad you said that. I hate to bring this up because I didn't see it until too late this morning to suggest adding it. Did you guys see the Joe Thomas breakdown of the Myles Garrett trade request?
Yeah, we're going to talk about Myles
It's
Garrett.
4 minutes.
No, I didn't see
I know
it.
we are. That has to be part of the conversation.
We
First
can
of
play
all,
the full
everybody
thing if we
should
want.
watch it. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
We'll play
I didn't
the
see
full
it.
thing later in the show.
It's
yeah.
incredible. It offers all kinds of insight.
All right.
Even a little bit of insight to what Joe might have been thinking
Yeah.
in his career, how their two
We'll play the
situations
full
are similar.
clip later in the show when we get to
Okay,
that,
great,
that segment.
'cause,
I just want
it
to
was
read
great.
one text from Bull, and then we're going to move on to the Cavs.
I knew he had
I
to
knew
weigh
he was
in.
watching.
No way
he's
he
watching.
couldn't weigh
He's in
in.
the chat. He just said the last 3 years, the best quarterback in football won 2 of the 3 Super Bowls. So
Yeah.
that was his
Yeah,
text.
but the trending arc is this year's. It didn't happen that way.
Well,
Just
And
read his
last year to be true, and go back even 2 years before that, it easily could have worked out in both of those games where it didn't happen. So I think it was close when the quarterback was winning it by himself, but this Super Bowl wasn't close. And it wasn't close because they had the best run game
You gotta
and the best defense.
You got to have all that. You got to
And
have.
it was Project Stockpile.
You got to have, if you want to beat the best quarterback, if you got the best quarterback with a really good quarterback, the best quarterback has the advantage only if you don't have a great team. But if you got 2 receivers, you got a stud line, you got running game, got top defense, you can win that game. You can win that.
The Eagles, I'm wondering what you guys think about this. The Eagles are a 3-win-in-a-row Super Bowl team if Patrick Mahomes is their quarterback. And they could keep this team together. This team is flush, guys. This team doesn't have a weakness.
Yeah, they're really good. And the one thing I think we can all agree on is you're not going to get there without a top quarterback, period.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You've
now,
got to have a top quarterback.
I agree with that, but here's where I would amend it. In the past, it had to be a top 5 quarterback. I really felt that. There was a stretch where if you go back and look at the quarterbacks that won it, they were all in the top 5. I think now the shift in the game is you can win it with a top 10, maybe a top 12. I don't know. If we started naming quarterbacks, I kind of feel like we could name 10.
Yeah,
we would take
I think
before
the
Jalen Hurts.
The bar shifts here. You can't just randomly say top 10 because one year you could have 12 that are elite and one year it's 8. So I don't like
but
putting
what I'm
numbers
saying
on
is,
it.
like, to me, there are. If you say who's elite, I think there's 4 elite quarterbacks, and even if you go by that, that's more than 10%, and that's being like elite isn't top 10%. Elite is top 5%. So if you start thinking in those terms, there's 2 elite quarterbacks, but we've moved that yard marker.
Because I think it's impossible to differentiate them.
It is
Like Mahomes
it
is number 1 to me still,
But
period.
like, what I always like
He's
is
number 1.
the all-pro team. You're picking 1 from the AFC and 1 from the NFC. That's 1 of 16.
No, you're not.
That's elite. No, in my mind, I always split the quarterbacks by conference. And I'm not saying you have to do it that way, but I look at the elite quarterbacks, to me, are all in the AFC.
Okay. So,
Now, and that's why I think I used to say you had to have an elite quarterback to win. And there was, I think, a stretch where you did. However, now I think, and I'll say this, you're not going to win a quarterback with a bad, or a Super Bowl with a bad quarterback. I don't think you can do that anymore. Once upon a time you could. Trent Dilfer did it. Brad Johnson did it. I know he didn't play poorly in the Super Bowl, but when you look at Nick Foles, like Nick Foles is a bad quarterback.
That was a fever dream.
But I think
So that was just and Brady played a great game too.
I believe I think the thing that we're missing is when you talk about being a great quarterback or you want to have a top 5 or top 12, you have to realize the lower you are in that ranking or wherever you are on that top 1 to 12 means that you have a less likely chance of doing what you need to do to get to the Super Bowl.
I agree.
You have to. So think about it. You're asking just a good quarterback to beat Lamar Jackson, then Josh Allen, then Patrick Mahomes, and somebody else.
Joe Burrow.
And Joe Burrow.
And Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the top 4.
So even if you got a great team and a good quarterback, that you got to be. You know how good you got to be week after week?
But that goes back to the point I've been making about everyone trying to say the Browns just court. Go sign go sign Aaron Rodgers. I don't care who you sign.
Wow.
And then
We're getting to that.
But I don't care. Sign whatever veteran you want. And then tell me that they have to beat in consecutive weeks some combination of Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes just to get to the Super Bowl. You're not going to do it.
The reason the Eagles were able to do this is because they weren't really good on the run and really good on defense. They were number 1 running the ball, and they were number 1 on defense.
And they played in the NFC.
Yeah, right. So they did have an easier runway to get there, but still, all of that being said, you can't win the Super Bowl with a 10th ranked quarterback and a 7th ranked defense and a 9th ranked running game. They were elite run, they were elite defense, and that's 2/3 of the game.
Yeah, I agree.
And so it was, to quote your words, that was Operation Stockpile. They were so good on defense and so good at the running game that they could win this without a top 10 quarterback or top 8 or whatever you want to say he is.
I agree.